The biggest mistake occurs during the purchasing process of your short-term rental, and it can cost you thousands. There's a huge misconception that all properties will work using the short-term rental methodology, and that's just simply not true. Instead, what you should be considering is how you're going to use this rental in multiple different ways and be most conservative all the way to your short-term rental methodology. So obviously you want the short-term rental thing to work, but we should also try to make sure that this short-term rental could also work as a long-term rental, meaning that you're being the most conservative possible. Because if you're at least, breaking even, or even if you're losing a little bit of money there, it's much safer. Because what you're going to want to do is Airbnb, VRBO, the short-term rental platforms, what they're going to do is they're going to optimize the efficiency of your rental. So you need to take that into consideration when you are purchasing your property. And this really just goes to show you how important that first step is and how you need to be careful when you're looking at purchasing a short-term rental, because the good times are great and the bad times are worse. So make sure you're protecting yourself, protecting your assets, and investing correctly. A conservative mindset is your friend when you're investing in short-term rentals. And the reason for that is because it is so easy to get caught in the hype of what's going on around you. So instead, look at it from a numbers perspective, right? Just as you would with any other real estate. And as I had mentioned before, obviously look for it to be a long-term rental and see if you could even break even there. And now that you're past that step, you're deciding, gosh, how much more will this optimize? What you can do is you can kind of start by looking at the enemy method, meaning that you can look at properties around you, how they're doing, how they're performing. You can use pricing tools like price labs that'll allow you to kind of understand the market and understand how much revenue properties are making around you. But you shouldn't just be taking the quantitative piece. You should be taking the qualitative piece into consideration as well. As science has always been key for the long-term rental game, and up to now Airbnb has for the most part been pretty free. What you want to consider is, how does it look? How does it make people feel? What are you offering that's different from other people? Because there's so many ways to subjectively make your property worth more and to provide more value to people. So see what the top producers are doing in your area. Do they have a hot tub? If everybody has a hot tub, you definitely need to have a hot tub in your property. And it's not just hot tubs, right? So it's going to be, do you have a bathtub? Do you have in-unit washer and dryer? Do you have really nice sheets? People love that. And especially if you're the person who books it, it's most likely that you're going to take the master bedroom, right? And so you want to make sure that the master bedroom has a bunch of features that are going to make them feel like their money was worth it. And it's ultimately going to come back in the form of your review. And one thing to note as well is, Price Labs or AirDNA, they're not going to give you exact numbers or give you the exact thing that you're looking for. It's not set in stone. So you need to be thinking actively of, how can I be conservative about this investment? How can I know the numbers that I need to hit, and then kind of make sure that we're still underneath that average daily rate that's being shown on AirDNA? Because for the most part, those things are changing. You need to take your information from multiple different platforms. That means you need to take it from AirDNA, from Price Labs. You need to do the enemy method, making sure that you're actually getting in and honing in on the actual numbers versus just taking somebody for what they're worth, or just listening to people in that neighborhood saying, oh, it's doing really well. That's great, and I'm happy for those people, but you really need to look inward and make sure that you are making the right decisions for you, because at the end of the day, after all of this, even if your agent, your lender, everybody's saying it's a good deal, none of them have this property falling back on them if it's not a good deal and if it doesn't work, right? And so at the end of the day, you are the one who's responsible, so make sure you're taking into consideration these multiple different sources and being the most conservative that you can be. And another consideration to have is the guest themselves. This place and property is not for you, and it is not a long-term rental, so you're not just allowing those people to take over. What you're doing is you want to create a space where people want to stay. You're building it for them. So instead of just being selfish and thinking about, oh, what I think I need, these are the numbers, this is what everything's saying, give. The rule of reciprocation is that the more you give, the more you can get as well. So make sure that you're providing value to these people, make sure they feel heard, make sure that you're doing above and beyond, because most people, when they do Airbnb, they're not doing that. They're not giving up and above. They're not making sure that their guests are comfortable in the space. So don't think about yourself, think about the guest. And if you want to make more money through Airbnb, make sure you are subscribing to my channel. And also, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you're giving it a like and leaving a comment down below, giving me your thoughts on what the biggest mistakes are and what you've seen from your experience. But Andrew, interest rates are so high, we're in a recession, it's never gonna work, the numbers don't make sense to buy a property right now. But the truth is behind this is that it's probably the best time to buy right now. Although interest rates are higher and maybe you can't buy as expensive of a place as you want to, the truth is that not as many people are looking to buy properties right now, and they're being pushed off by the whole sentiment that, we're going to enter a recession, there'll be a better time to buy when everything falls down and goes back into a low. It's never, if any time that you are trying to time the market, you are gambling. And the truth is that now is a great time to buy because of the concept that people are shying away from it. And not that it's better pricing or anything along those lines. It's simply that there are better opportunities being provided and there are less people looking to buy. Meaning that you can get the property that you want and it's going to be at that higher interest rate, but you can always refinance down the road. I think we really need to stop thinking about properties and how they're going to do in the short term and start considering that, hey, you have a 30-year loan on this property. Be in it for the long haul. And I'm not saying you have to be in it for 30 years, but, think about 3, 5, 10 years, like what that timeline looks like, and stop thinking about just the short term. Also, the whole concept of, well, if it's a short term, it's going to suffer because it's a recession and nobody's going to go on vacations, and it's just simply not true. There are people out there that have money to continuously go on vacations when they want to. And if you have a short-term rental that is a true beachfront, lakefront, really great location in a downtown of a major city, like those are going to do great, and you're not going to see the hits that you would for a property that, for instance, many people during the good times have created Airbnbs. Maybe they Airbnb their home, a room in their house, etc. They're the ones that are going to see those impacts, the ones that aren't specifically made to be those vacation destinations. Those ones will start to see some impacts. So I would consider, if you're going to buy a short-term rental, to buy one that is true to its characteristics in order to just protect yourself. But if you're buying good, if you're making sure that your numbers work, you can still make those optimizations over your long-term comps. So make sure that you're considering that as you're looking to invest. Also, just having multiple different strategies. So we talked about the long-term one, if that works, but also there's a concept of midterm rental stays. And you can do that through Airbnb, but really it's just 30 plus days. And the way that looks is there's a risk to reward ratio, and on the far left you have the short-term rentals, which are high risk, high reward, and you have on the right side the long-term rentals, which are low risk, low reward, meaning that with short-term rentals they might just get booked 2 to 6 days before, right? Whereas on the far right side you have long-term leases that could have just a 12-month lease, and that's really great, right? And then you see the center line, and just past the center line here, pretty much in between short-term rental and center line, you're going to see the midterm rentals. So oftentimes I see those 30 plus day stays. People will just want flexible leasing. They want an opportunity to stay somewhere for a month, 2 months, a month and a half, just so that they can kind of figure out life for a second. And they're willing to pay more because nobody else is really offering these options. So that could be a really good in-between market. It's more recession resistant too, because if you're thinking about it, traveling nurses need places to stay for those periods of time. They're getting paid. Traveling business consultants, people that work in contracting, like people are getting per diem. So they're not afraid to pay a little bit more to get that space for the time that they need. And especially if it's a prime location, if it's a nice property, definitely something to consider. So if you're not quite at the short-term rental and you want to, or if it's not really working, consider moving down to the midterm. People are always looking for that. But you need to make sure that you're providing those amenities like laundry so that people want to stay there and can stay there for longer periods of time without having to just leave the house to go to a laundromat. And upon using all these strategies that we've kind of discussed, you'll find yourself in a no-lose situation, because you know that this property will work in a variety of different ways, and that will allow you to kind of take these steps forward and have the confidence you need to actually buy the property that is going to change your life, right? Because that's what we're doing this for. We're investing in property so that we can have the equity and appreciation over time, and hopefully the cash flow. And your property might not cash flow right away, but that's also the beauty of real estate, is that with time you'll start to see those returns that you really want to have. Even if you invested in a bad deal, over time real estate is very forgiving. So don't have any emotions when you're buying real estate. Stick to the numbers. Check your qualitative and quantitative data. Compare, contrast, use multiple different platforms, and you too will no, just kidding. And if you do that, you will find success within real estate, and you'll start to build. There are things that you can never comprehend that will happen because maybe you don't have the experience, maybe you're new, and that's okay. But this whole thing is just a little bit of a bump in the road. You're in the right direction. Buy real estate. See you next time.